So this is our inaugural broadcast of the S&M show. And what are we talking about today?
Well, first I got to say, you got to love that intro. I mean, I love the intro. Don't you love the intro?
The intro is awesome. The intro is awesome. So
I thought today we'd talk about what seems to be important to a lot of people coming here is ways to earn a living. I mean, I think a lot of people are really passionate about not starving to death.
when I first came here, it was one of my major concerns was how was I going to make money? For me, I sort of found that there were just limited ways for foreigners to make money here. So
It is limited, and unless you're a retiree or already wealthy, you have to find your own way.
yes,
And I find that very common. A lot of people also come here as tourists, and they love the place, for right or for wrong. And they, obviously then, they're here and they want to stay. There's a lot of people that travel somewhere and then they just decide they're not going home.
yeah,
And I think a lot of expats that are here, especially some of the younger ones, that's the situation, and they need a way to make a living. They need to earn money.
yeah.
So what I've got is a list of things that I've done, or seen, or heard about,
Okay,
or even participated in.
all right.
Um,
So what's the first one?
The first one is actually what we're doing. There's a lot of YouTube bloggers out there.
YouTubers. Yeah, there's a lot of things to see and do, not just here in Chiang Mai, but throughout all of Thailand. I mean, the nooks and crannies of Thailand are just fascinating, and tons of places to do YouTubes with whatever your focus is. Yeah.
Sure. There's even I think there's even a Facebook group for YouTubers in Chiang Mai. I think it's called YouTubers in Chiang Mai or something like that. We can put that in the description later.
Yeah. Yeah, we can add that into the comment section.
Right. And that group, I've looked into that group, and there are people posting with questions and people helping. So if that's something you want to do, look into that group, and you might get some inspiration, some ideas.
Yeah, it's a good, Thailand's a tourist destination, and most people don't just go, well, I'm going to Thailand without any preparation, even looking at a guidebook or something. And now, of course, with YouTube, people can go to YouTube and watch the videos and actually see some of the things and decide where they want to go and what things they want to do.
Well, it doesn't even have to be about Thailand. It could be about whatever. I mean, there's YouTubers on China, there's YouTubers on Vietnam, and you're here in Thailand doesn't mean that you have to discuss Thailand.
Of course.
Or exclusively, and we're not going to be discussing it exclusively as a topic.
Of course.
So pick whatever you
We
want.
just happen to be here doing our discussions. So.
Through astral projection, my physical body is actually somewhere else.
I'm a hologram. All right, so what's the second?
I always felt something superficial about you. All right.
What's the second thing?
The second one is a very broad topic, which is digital nomads.
Digital nomads.
Which could be anything, right? It could be developers, it could be writers, it could be copy editors, it could be people trading. Digital nomads isn't necessarily people that are employed by a company. It could be a business owner, it could be an employee, it could be somebody who's just a trader.
Yeah.
And I've done a number of those things on different levels myself.
What's good if you have a decent salary with a company in whatever currency, and you can take that job, that job is portable, you can do it anywhere, then Thailand's a great place. It's not expensive, tons of things to do and see.
Oh yeah, ideally you want to make a Western salary and be living here, ideally.
Yes.
A lot of people find digital nomad work when they're here, and the salaries can be competitive, but usually a bit less than what you'd get in the West.
Yeah.
Or maybe not a bit less, but quite good compared to, say, teaching or some other kind of work here.
Yeah.
Which is
another one.
further down my list.
Which is I did quite a bit of that here before I left to go work in another country, and planned on staying here, but went to to work for contractors in other countries. So,
That was quite lucrative for you.
yeah, it was very good.
I know exactly how lucrative.
Yeah, it was American salary basically for an overseas job, even though it wasn't in the U.S. So, yeah, it was quite good. And even some of the companies I worked for were British companies or Australian companies. They're still paid pretty well.
So that was teaching, right? It was all teaching related?
It was teaching related, yeah. Yeah, I was actually doing examinations, you know, but we're talking thousands of students that I was in charge of examining. So the salary was quite good. And again, it's dollars or Saudi Riyal that I'm bringing back to Thailand to live on. So
Got Saudi Riyal envy now.
it's quite good. But about teaching here, it's got its ups and downs. I mean, there's lots of teaching jobs. Well, not right now, sort of post-COVID.
There are some
They're still out there. It will start ramping up very shortly here with getting back to face-to-face teaching again. So the openings will happen. But the salaries are livable. And I say that like with air quotes, livable. If you're used to living, you know, a Western lifestyle, the salary here is probably not going to get you enough to live a Western lifestyle.
It depends.
It does depend on the person.
Depends on the qualifications of the person, if they're teaching in Chiang Mai versus Bangkok.
Of course.
If they're teaching in an international school, or just a language teacher. So that's a really big pool there.
But I would say this. It is not like you're going to live off a small portion of your salary and bank the rest. It's actually, I believe, going to be the reverse.
In most cases.
In most cases,
Yeah,
you're
that's
going to have a small portion that you can save, and the major portion is going to go to your rent, food, transportation.
But anyway, you won't be able to do that so easily as on a teaching salary here. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. If you're coming here to teach, you definitely do not want to count on the salary like for everything. You could have a salary that's not going to support you really that well. I remember when I first came here, I think in a month I made like 12,000 baht teaching English.
Well, that's how we met. We were teaching it.
Even
we were
before
teaching
we
English
met.
at the same university.
Yeah, but even before that, it was hourly, and it was when I could get classes, when the school had enough people to form a class, and for me to come and actually teach the class.
We both been here a long time. I've been
Yeah.
here almost 13 years. How about you?
Yeah, 2009. So
Yeah, same year.
12
Okay.
years, yeah.
And I've heard from many people that were here before and have come back, or people that have never left, that the salaries back then were equal in baht, or even better than they are now,
Yeah.
and better than they were when we started teaching here. In
Yeah, I
2009.
believe that. I mean, you get. It probably comes in waves of people who come and want to teach, and the bigger the pool is, the lower the salaries can go.
Well, the pool has probably been bigger since before 2009,
Yeah.
and stayed that way. And even through COVID, they haven't
Yeah.
adjusted the salaries to reflect the lack of
Yeah, I think
supply.
I think that they'll probably have to adjust them a little bit once they start bringing people back in, because I don't think there'll be that many available teachers.
No, that won't work. You're thinking logically.
Yeah.
This is Thailand.
Yeah.
Okay. My favorite expression about Thailand is stop thinking logically, because you're going to hurt
That's
yourself
true.
or someone else.
That's true.
No. We know that won't. We
That's
know that won't happen because it's logical.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
That's true. So what else? What other things can you do?
Okay. Besides teaching, there's translation work. I speak a number of languages, and I actually found through one of the language institutes, I don't teach anymore, I used to, and through the language institute that I used to work with, they connected me to somebody who wanted to do, and I never met this individual, French to English. Sorry, it was English to French, and I'm
Okay.
not a native French speaker. It was English to French. This was a long time ago, and I would do it online. They'd send me the text, which was they were selling clothing products, especially
Right.
custom tailored clothing products, and I would translate the advertisements. And I made a bit of money that way. It wasn't lucrative, but it was a bit of extra cash, and I just used Microsoft Word and do the translations. And I mean, obviously translating English to Thai and Thai to English, forget it, you're not a Thai, and even if you speak absolutely fluently, you're not hireable for that because a Thai can do the job.
Yeah.
But stuff like, French to English, English to French, or Spanish, which I also speak, or Chinese if you're from China or Taiwan, that could work for you.
Yeah.
That's another thing. The other thing is writing blogs. There's a lot of bloggers here.
Bloggers. Okay.
A lot of bloggers.
Nice.
They write about whatever experiences in Thailand, their experiences in their life. I don't know how much money it makes, but I know I'm part of a writing group, and at least one person I know in there is a regular blogger, and I don't know what kind of income stream she gets from it, but it is possible.
You did bring up a good point. You mentioned jobs that Thais can do. And legally, there are a number of occupations here in Thailand that are protected for Thai people.
The majority, the
That-
vast majority.
That foreigners cannot do. So you cannot come here and be a cook. You can be an executive chef, but you cannot be a cook. Okay? Now, obviously, the workaround is as the executive chef, you're, preparing meals, but you will need Thai staff to
Absolutely.
legally work.
And there would have to be some justification, not that it would be hard to find, for the employer to put you in that position. We have foreign customers, or we need somebody who's a specialist in foreign food, or
Sure.
something that makes it plausible that the Thais in that business, in that industry, can't do the job.
Sure. And what you'll find here is in a lot of the foreign restaurants here, Italian, French restaurants, you've got Thai chefs, but the main guy is an Italian or a French guy. He's the executive chef. He was either hired by the owner or he is the owner, and structurally he has a work permit to be the executive chef. Even if he is cooking, he can say it's for demonstration purposes, but
Which
very,
should be the
very-
case because it's his native food and he knows how to prepare it.
Of course, of
Which
course.
quite often you'll go to a local restaurant where they don't have a foreigner and they'll advertise Western food and they'll botch it.
Yeah,
And if you ask for it to be redone, they'll tell you, no, that's how we make that. No,
Yeah.
that's not right.
I'm telling you, the reverse works in other countries because we've had pad thai, which is like Thailand's national dish. We've had that in Saudi Arabia, and it's not even close to pad thai.
I can imagine, yeah. If you don't have Thai cooking
It's
it, and they've never been
somebody's-
properly instructed.
Yeah, somebody's imagination of what pad thai. Not that it was bad; it just was not pad thai. So again, the point being, jobs. If you're coming to and you want to do a certain job, make sure that it's not a protected job
And-
before you come over and plan your whole life around that,
Well, that's
only to discover that you can't
A
do
super
it.
good point. A
Yeah.
super good point. In fact, the list is enormous. We can get into a bit more into that later with one of the other topics because I've worked for a number of employers here outside of teaching and done my own.
Sure.
Like I said, I've been a bit of a digital nomad. If you want to count trading as a digital nomad, I've done translation, I've done teaching, I've worked in an architectural firm. So we can touch on that when we get into the architectural firm. But that's a really good point.
All right.
The
What
next.
other jobs you got?
Well, the other jobs are sort of subsets. Well, one of them is a subset of digital nomad, or a couple of them are. Like I said, you can try writing, not blogs, but writing for an employer.
Oh, okay.
People who write books and are getting published. Okay, I know a number of friends
Right.
who are published or getting published. Who I started with, and I've gone on my own tangent, and they've actually succeeded in getting published. Self-publishing. You can qualify that as a kind of digital nomadry. If
Sure.
You want,
Sure.
It's not a word, but if they're successfully making income from that, employed or not, and they're portable, that
Sure.
qualifies as a digital nomad. I guess writing blogs also would qualify.
Right.
There's copywriting, copy editing, there's trading, and that's something I do. I get into. I've been trading stocks and crypto for quite a few years now, mainly crypto. And there's even crypto meetings here. I don't go for my own reasons. I do things on my own. But a lot of people make a living on their crypto profits.
Sure.
And that's what I do. That's
Sure.
what I've been doing for 5 years.
Sure.
So that works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luna.
Luna. It's gonna date this. It's gonna date this podcast, but Luna. Ooh, good thing I don't have any.
Business. Right, there's a number of people who have online businesses. They do drop shipping. There's drop
Right.
shipping. There's people with restaurants. A lot of foreigners open up a restaurant or a cafe. There's 100 million cafes here.
Yeah.
I don't suggest that. I mean, people want to,
Yeah.
I want to open a cafe. Yeah, it's cafe land.
Yeah.
Guess what? There's tons of cafes already. Some of them are very good. I don't get the idea. I mean, I've had Thais also come to me, I want to open a cafe. Why?
Right.
You've got so much competition already, and
Right.
some of them are excellent.
Right.
Some are shite,
Right.
but some are excellent.
Right.
And they've got lots of land. Some of them are wealthy people with lots of land, and they put a nice atmosphere there. Why do you want to compete in a field where you've got so many cafes?
Yeah, where the average sale is, 40 or 50 baht.
Well, I would say that's the low end, but
Okay.
I mean,
I
they get
mean-
the desserts, they get the food, and then
Sure,
that brings
but
it up.
I mean, high investment and small average sales
High risk.
is, and
I would say
high
small
risk.
profit, not necessarily sales, but small profit.
Sure.
High risk, big front end investment.
Yeah.
And then you're tied into a lease or property. And
Yeah, and if you're
staff,
Thai and you're
work
rich,
permits.
it's easily affordable. But if you're coming here as a foreigner, you might end up with a small pot of money from your big pot of money.
One could say the same. One could make the same argument for restaurants. I mean, that doesn't.
Oh, wait, no, 100%.
That doesn't mean people haven't succeeded. We both know somebody who has
Sure.
succeeded. He was actually a teacher, and I know in the beginning he had a lot of struggles, and he supported his business by teaching, and he's doing well now. He has a second shop. I know somebody else who makes French pastries,
Yeah,
also a teacher.
yeah,
It doesn't mean that you can't come here and start one of those businesses, but you've got a hell of a lot of competition.
it can
And
be
some
done.
of the time businesses are quite good.
Yeah, it can be done, and there's a way to do it that will help to make you successful. But it's pretty much the only
There's
way.
an
To
old
do it.
expression that I used to hear a lot in the Dominican Republic where I used to live, which is, how do you make a small fortune in Thailand?
Bring a big one.
Yeah, there you go. Bring a big one. So,
It's not just the Dominican Republic.
no, I'm sure it's not. But, that's exactly why I brought it up. It's relevant here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's relevant here and just about any other country. Yeah,
it doesn't mean you can't succeed, but
Yeah.
I mean, those are businesses that have lots of competition, and some of them are very good, both foreign and Thai. And like I said, this guy that I know who succeeded, that we both know, he struggled a lot in the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did, and I know he did. He told me the problems he
Yeah.
had. So keep that in mind, and that's one of the reasons I've never opened a business here.
yeah,
And on top of that, you get all the work permits and all the paperwork. It's a very bureaucratic society.
very.
There's all sorts of permits involved. You can't, unless you're, I think if you're American, you can. I'm not. You can own up to 51% of the business.
You can
But if
actually.
you're not, you need a Thai who's 51% of it.
Yeah, there's actually an agreement for what they call an American Amity Corporation, and you need to invest 20 million baht. Right now, that's about $600,000, I believe.
Is that the minimum investment?
That is the minimum investment that allows you to own 100% of the company as an American. You do not need any Thai people.
Well, it's 100%. But
Yeah.
I think there's a basic Amity agreement that lets you own 51%.
It's possible. Yeah,
I've looked into it with
Yeah.
a friend, and you don't need the full 20 million baht.
that's possible. But I know if you want to own it outright as an American, it's a 20 million baht investment. So, yeah, it's
Drop
about
in the bucket.
it's about
Just drop in the bucket.
$550,000-$600,000 right now.
It's
US dollars.
A couple quadrillion lunas, no problem.
Yeah. So, anything else on your list?
You're a lawyer or you're I know there's lawyers that have their own practices here, foreign lawyers.
Yes.
I don't know what's involved in that, but I have seen lawyers who seem to have their own practice.
I've also seen them where they work for the Thai firms or they're partners
Yes.
in the Thai firms.
Maybe they start off that way. I really don't know.
And it could very well be the whole 49-51 thing where if it's two guys, he doesn't own a majority simply because of the law.
Hey, let's be gender neutral here.
Yeah.
Two people.
Or her.
Or-
So, or any women that want to come practice law. So, one of the things about here is that there are lots of handicrafts, and handicrafts can be exported.
That's another one.
You can, if you have something you want made, you can get it made here. Not necessarily in Chiang Mai. There's limited capacity for production, but more towards Bangkok, north of Bangkok, and down on where Rayong is, on the sort of southeast corner of Thailand. There's manufacturing. So you want to make something, you can have it made, ship it to your favorite selling place, and sell it to the world.
I have a friend who's been very successful. He doesn't do it so much anymore, but he made his. I think he got quite wealthy doing that. A lot of export.
Yes.
And exactly, he was living in Bangkok and he was exporting handicraft and furniture and so on. Here in Chiang Mai, if you go just a little bit south towards Hangdong, there's an area called Ban Thawai.
Right.
And that's full of handicrafts and carvings and beautifully made wood.
And not
I
just
thought about
individual pieces. We're talking about they're replicated over and over. So you want a 2-foot tall wooden elephant, you can get them to make 100 of them for you. So
that, and they've also got some. These I was looking into exporting. They've got some intricate Chinese style sculptures in there where they very fine detail. And I mean, these are huge. I mean, they're like 6 feet tall.
are you talking about the wood carvings?
The wood carvings are
Yeah.
extremely intricate
Yeah.
and beautiful. And I used to think there might be a market for that somewhere in the West. Of course, I didn't have the customers.
Yeah.
But these things are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and they're
because
beautiful.
they're handmade.
And they're beautiful.
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
They're huge, and they're very labor intensive.
Yeah.
Okay, another kind of work is some people are like fitness instructors and so on. I'm not sure how legal that is because that's something that Thais can do.
Yeah.
But I do know people that are kind of fitness advisors, and I've seen that in sort of Thai, where they're in gyms teaching people Muay Thai. I mean, these are obviously experienced foreigners here who know their Muay Thai, but I've seen them teach Muay Thai and I've seen them teach just fitness in general, or help to be fitness advisors.
Yeah. I probably, as an individual, it's definitely
Under the
very
table.
close. Yeah, it's very close to the illegal line, if not over. If you tried to do it as a company where you sent people out who were foreigners, you're definitely at some point going to get caught.
Talking about getting caught, even people teaching online have been caught.
Yes.
Because I don't know why. In the past, the government never used to have a problem with it. Maybe before we switched over to this, to the military government. I think under Thaksin it was okay. They considered it nothing to do with Thailand, so it was
Right.
okay. And now what happens is, obviously if you're at home, they're not going to raid your house. But if you're teaching online, that's work, and they want you to have a work permit.
Right.
Which sometimes is impossible because you may not be working for a Thai company, you may be working for a Chinese company teaching English to Chinese kids or something.
Right.
And people used to do that in some of the digital nomad spaces in cafes, in groups. And they got raided here.
Believable.
Raided, arrested, and possibly deported, I'm not sure.
Right.
But they didn't have a work permit, they got heavily fined, and of course there were consequences for
Yeah, that is another thing to note, is that Thailand is very protective of its people and the jobs. They do not want foreigners of any ilk, Westerners, Asians, coming in and taking over the jobs that Thais could do, whether the Thai people want to do it or not. For example, a lot of construction is done by Burma, Myanmar people. They will basically catch them and either send them back or make the guy they're working for register them.
Right. They can
for
be
a Thai,
registered.
it's quite substantial. Yeah, it's about 50,000 baht for 2 people. I knew somebody who was involved in that. So it can be very expensive, but which is of course why they try to circumvent that. But they even go after their own people. It's not just foreigners.
Sure, that's true.
They're
You mean the
equal
business owner.
opportunity.
You mean if the business owner is Thai, is what you mean?
Correct.
Yeah. That's
Even if the business owner is Thai and he has people without immigrant visas working, without work permits,
they get big fines.
they may have a visa, but with no work permit, they will find them and they will make them get the work permit. And the work permit is like 3,000 baht. That's not going to wreck your business. But it's not just that. As you mentioned earlier, it's the bureaucracy. It's the tons and tons,
Tons
half
of
inch of paperwork.
And then the hassles, if they want to, they'll make you go and get this paper, and then they'll say you need this, but then
Right.
when you get back, you're missing more.
Right.
I've been through all that. There are some. How can I put it? There is some flexibility for Southeast Asian people. So in other words, Burmese people can work in construction. They can work in shops. They
Right.
can work in restaurants serving the customers, which as a Westerner, we can't. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen Westerners serving coffee.
Yeah,
I don't know how they got away with it. It's completely illegal. There's no workaround. There's no exceptions for that.
yeah.
Maybe they got caught.
It's just they haven't gotten caught. Because you can go pretty much every day to Chiang Mai immigration over by the airport and see the bus where they've loaded up the people that they're basically deporting back to, either Laos or
Right.
Burma
Right.
or Cambodia.
And
Not so
those-
much here for Cambodia.
Those are
but-
people who just don't have the paperwork. But most of those low-end jobs, the Burmese and the Laotians can do with the right paperwork.
Correct.
Because
correct.
many Thais don't want those low-end jobs.
And that was the point, is that they don't want the house cleaning jobs anymore. They don't want the construction jobs anymore.
Well,
And
some do, I guess.
I mean, so of course, I'm not saying it as a rule. It's generalization, but I don't think it's a hasty generalization. It's really it's really the more you look and the more you see the people, you notice. Okay, these guys are Burmese working here. I don't care. They do a good job of building the houses, and Thai people aren't going to do it. So I think within the government, there's a lot of resistance to that, where our people would do it if the jobs were available, but that's just not going to happen.
What irks me,
in my opinion.
What irks
so.
me a bit is I have seen Chinese owners, like restaurant owners and shop owners, serve the customers without any Thai staff,
Yeah.
or with one Thai staff doing something else. That's illegal.
Yes.
And they get away with it for years, maybe
Yes.
forever, because they look Asian. And so what happens is the Thai immigration or police, or whoever, doesn't investigate, or they're not
Sure.
reported. I'm not sure why. But as Asians, it's less of an issue. It's still illegal, and there may be some who get caught. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've gone into many a Chinese restaurant here with Chinese owners serving the customers and being the only employee I see in the shop.
Yeah.
You could never get away with that as a
Yeah.
Westerner.
It's possible that they're Thai,
Not for
but
long.
it's probably unlikely.
No, they're not. I know they're
So,
not.
well,
I speak a bit
We
of
got to give them the
Chinese, and
benefit. We got to give them the
No,
benefit. of the
I
doubt.
know they're not, because I would go to these places
Yeah.
with Chinese friends,
I got you.
and they told me no, that owner is Chinese.
I also, I could see if I was the owner and I've got the labor people coming in, I just say, well, I just served this one guy. This is my server who normally serves everyone else, whether they do or they don't.
I have no idea.
The one Thai person serves as the pawn for the excuse that he can serve, one dish. He was busy cleaning up, so I served the customer,
Well, I mean, it's easy to get away with if as long as nobody actually comes in when they're serving anyone.
Yeah.
But and they may have one Thai staff around or a Burmese person. They say, oh no,
Yeah.
that individual serves the customers.
Yeah.
But the fact that they look Thai or similar to Thai
Sure.
means that there's less investigation,
Sure.
and it's less problematic.
Sure.
If you look Western, or African,
Well,
and
you're
you're going to stand out, and it's not just the immigration coming. Thai people will complain,
Yeah.
and that's usually where most of these investigations happen, is when somebody, could be anybody, goes and makes a complaint to immigration. That's when the schools get raided, that's when the co-working spaces get raided. It may be customers, it may be a jealous competitor, and quite often that's the case, it's some jealous competitor, or it may be somebody with a dwelling nearby, they're living nearby, and there's noise, or they just don't like too many cars in their parking lot, or it could be whatever the reason. They feel vindictive, they go report you, you get raided, bye-bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what happens.
So basically, we're talking about jobs that, as a rule or as a generalization, they involve actual work most of the time outside of Thailand, where you might be doing the work, your pay comes to your bank account in another country, which again is an important distinction. They may not always consider it, but because at some point you've got to either get money here or use your foreign credit card for everything, which can become a little bit expensive. But it is a consideration that they will look at as far as whether you need to obtain, a business license and work permit.
You mean if you're working abroad?
No, so let's say I work for an American company doing coding, and they give me assignments to code, inputs, outputs. I make the code, I send it to them. They send my money to my American bank account.
Yeah.
And so I'm just working online. I'm working in Thailand, but I'm doing work for an American company, getting paid in American currency in America. It's a fine line. It's possible that Thailand could say, nope, you get a business license and a work permit. But
I've never heard of that being the case in this. I know
Yeah,
it's not very
actually-
different from teaching online, but as long as you're not teaching in some public space that could hypothetically, maybe perhaps get raided, I don't see that happening.
well,
What it could bring up is, unless you're on a retirement visa or a marriage visa, what kind of visa are you going to get with that?
right. Well, that's the other thing that ties in with all of these jobs is the visa.
That's going to be an issue.
It's flat out illegal to work on a tourist visa. Whether you're doing it or not, it is illegal to work on a tourist visa.
Absolutely.
So in that way, you have to be careful. You have to get like a business visa, a B visa, which would require some type of letter from a Thai company saying that they want you to come and that they're not going to pay you in Thai baht. And then you can get a B visa that doesn't require a work permit. But again, there's a line there. There's a fine line. You have to leave every 90 days, which is a whole other topic. Visas.
That's a whole other topic. And then there's the topic of BOI businesses as well, which are, I think, excluded from the 100% owner or 51% ownership by Thais.
Yeah.
And the 4 Thai employees per foreigner, because that's the usual standard, right?
Yeah.
If you have a business, you need 4 Thai employees
Yes.
for every foreigner, and then you need the work permits for the foreigner. I think a BOI will get around that.
Yeah.
But then you've got to show that you're meeting expectations, and you have to have a serious business plan.
Yeah, and I have a friend who has a business in Hua Hin doing bicycle tours, and he has his service crew, because they do long bike rides. His service crew are Thais, so they've got drivers and they've got bicycle technicians, and his wife is Thai, so she's one of the 4, and they have another 3. So they basically have to meet that requirement so that he can have. She's the owner of the company, obviously, and she issues him the letter so that he can get the B visa
Usually how
and
it
the work
happens.
permit, and then he doesn't have to leave every 90 days. You just have to check in with immigration, much like we do. So, yeah, it's. I think as a general rule, before you come here, check the list of prohibited jobs. If you have one of those prohibited jobs that you want to do here, make sure, again, by internet searches, that there's a workaround that's not going to get you kicked out or fined. And, you know, make sure that you're in at least the gray area of the work arena, so that you don't get busted. They will fine you, and they don't have any problems fining you. In fact, I tend to think they enjoy it. Yes.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, it's very rare that you get a Mipe and Rye, which is never mind, and they don't charge you any money. They say, you know, go fix this. Very. What else could you do here?
Well, there's something like what you did, basically, is seasonal work, or, well, you didn't do it seasonal, but you went to work in another country.
Yeah.
And sent money here as needed. You kept your residence here.
Yeah.
And you had a home here.
Yeah. I had my 1 year O visa, immigrant O, because you know, I'm married to a Thai woman, and so she has she sponsors me basically. Is how it works. And when we go to the U.S., if we go to the U.S., at one point we were there. She had a green card, and she's listed as IR6, which is basically green card by virtue of citizenship of her husband. So, or if she was married to a woman by virtue.
But there are people here who do seasonal work. I know a few Canadians